all seated, and we are socially distanced, which is great. I welcome everybody for coming today. This is just one of the regular days for Novavax. This is Maryland, Montgomery County, Gaithersburg. This is the center of vaccine development for coronavirus in the world right now. And this is it. You saw the labs where the very first clone was made. We probably had to make 30 different constructs to get it right. The one we found was the one that was the most stable, produced in these cells that you looked at high levels, and produced the highest level of antibodies and T-cell responses. And we're very proud of that. I'll give you a few more words, but let me introduce our guests. Governor Hogan, thank you, sir, for coming. It's a real honor for us to have you here. Along with the governor, we have Michelle McMurray Heath, who is CEO of Bio. Oh, there you are. You're only in red. I couldn't see you over there. Thank you very much, Michelle. We've had conversations on the phone, and now we get to meet in person, which is very nice. I'm also pleased to welcome the Secretary of Commerce, Kelly Schultz. Kelly Schultz. Oh, there you are. Thank you. Senator Kagan, Cheryl Kagan, Mayor Ashman. There you go. And County Executive Elrich, as well as Ben Wu, CEO of the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation, Marty Rosendale, CEO of Maryland Tech Council, and Brian Gaines, CEO of Learning Undefeated. It's great that you all are here. I think that I hope you learned a little bit about what we do, because I think it's really important to see how a vaccine is being made. We are a vaccine company that's been around Gaithersburg for a long time. I've been here a little over 10 years with the team making vaccines. We make vaccines for respiratory diseases, and it turns out coronavirus is a respiratory disease along with influenza and respiratory syncytial virus. This is not our first coronavirus vaccine. We've actually made 3 vaccines for coronavirus. We made one for SARS many years ago. We made one for Middle East respiratory syndrome half a dozen years ago. And now, starting January 11th or 12th, we can claim that that's when we started to make our COVID-2 vaccine. And so we're experienced at this. We're experienced at making vaccines that are safe. We're experienced at making vaccines that are highly effective in stimulating potent immune responses in both antibodies and T-cell responses. We're making vaccines that are stable. They can be stable at room temperature and refrigerated. We don't have to freeze it at -70. And we make vaccines that can be made in very high quantities. If you don't have all 4 of those characteristics, you don't have a vaccine that's suitable for global supply. We have been developing the vaccine through animal models, through non-human primates. We've shown that it works. We're in phase 1 trials that we finished and published in the New England Journal of Medicine a couple of weeks ago, showing that we have probably the best product profile of any vaccine. We are in phase 2Bs right now in the US and Australia. We are about to enter 3 different phase 3 trials, including a trial that's starting imminently in the UK. Excuse me. A trial that's going to be starting in 10,000 people, a trial that's starting in the U.S. in a few weeks, that'll be 30,000 people, and a 3rd phase 3 trial in India. So we have a global presence. This is a global disease. I don't think it's sufficient that we have a vaccine that is just used for the United States. To protect the United States, you need to protect the world. There's a global economy, and that's what we're doing. And our little company has headquartered in Maryland. I'll reiterate that. is grown from about 100 people when we started the year. When we started the year, we were anticipating results from an influenza phase 3 pivotal trial, which we got, and the results were spectacular. But at the same time, we started with COVID, and so we started with 100 people here. Since April, since we started scaling up, we've doubled the size of the company. We've added 116 people just in these 2 or 3 blocks. And the plan is, so that gets us to 300 people, and the plan is to double that again, to add another 200 and some odd people in the coming 6 months. And so just in the U.S., that'll bring us to from 165 people globally to around 1,000 people globally to be able to produce vaccine. We are expanding our footprint to accommodate these people and of both lab space and to be able to make more vaccine. In addition to the 2 buildings that we have here, we have just moved into a building on 704 Quince Orchard. We're negotiating leases for another 200,000 square feet of space, all within a mile of radius of here. So that's what we're doing. We don't have weekends. We haven't had weekends since January. Some people are getting weary, and I worry about that, but everybody's motivated to come into this shop. I mean, this is the place to go. And Nita, I think you're one of the most motivated people we know, and Nita's done all the work that you saw in her lab. So that's what we do. I think I've covered most of what I was supposed to read. I forgot to read it, but at any rate. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Governor Hogan to make a few remarks. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Stan, and thank you to everyone at Novavax for inviting me to be here today. We just finished up a few moments ago. We had the chance to tour the Discovery Lab and the Immunology Lab here at Novavax's headquarters in Gaithersburg, and to see firsthand some of the incredible cutting-edge research that's being done here at this really incredible Maryland company. And by the way, we haven't had too many weekends off either, so thank you for the dedication since January. But when the COVID-19 crisis began, even before we had our first confirmed cases here, I said that our state was home to some of the top companies and top health research facilities in the world, and that it was my hope that Maryland would be a part of developing treatments and perhaps even a vaccine for this deadly virus. Novavax certainly stepped up and took that challenge head on and immediately hit the ground running. I think that they're further along and doing a much better job than any of the other companies that are focused on vaccines and cures. And I just want to congratulate you and your team for all of the incredible work. They aren't the only company that's been working on cutting-edge stuff to help us with this coronavirus. You know, Maryland has an unparalleled biopharma cluster, 500 great biotech companies and 2,700 life sciences companies, and the highest concentration of doctoral scientists in America. We were first to map the human genome, first to develop a rapid test for Ebola, first to create an FDA-approved blood test for colon cancer, and now, in the words of the Washington Post, our state is playing a, quote, outsized role in the worldwide hunt for a coronavirus vaccine. As we speak, nearly 40 other Maryland companies are also working on developing and manufacturing COVID vaccines and therapeutics, improving diagnostic tests, and providing clinical research and technical support to ensure a safe and effective healthcare delivery system during this global pandemic. Novavax, which has been in business for more than 30 years, and as Stan said, now employs 300 people, soon to grow even larger. They were awarded $1.6 billion through Operation Warp Speed to complete late-stage clinical development, to establish large-scale manufacturing, and to rapidly deliver 100 million vaccine doses as early as late this year, early next year. Novavax received $388 million from the International Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, and an additional $60 million through a U.S. Department of Defense contract to support vaccine production. The coronavirus vaccine candidate that's been developed by Novavax is one of the most promising in the country, if not the world. And as Stan said, they're in their second phase of clinical trials, both domestically and internationally, making it one of the very few vaccine candidates anywhere that has advanced through multiple phases of clinical development. The state of Maryland is incredibly proud to support the efforts of Novavax and our entire hub of life sciences companies, which is at the forefront of the fight against COVID-19. In anticipation of a vaccine, I'm pleased to announce that advanced planning is currently underway at the Maryland Department of Health for the ordering, acquiring, and distributing and administering a vaccine just as soon as it becomes available. Following CDC guidelines, this plan will immediately make the vaccine available to Marylanders who are most at risk. The Marylanders at high risk of developing complications from COVID-19, including staff and residents of nursing homes and long-term care facilities, assisted care, clients of daycare, senior daycare facilities, as well as to critical frontline healthcare workers, essential workers in public safety, education, and in other staff at congregate living facilities. And I just want to say, on behalf of a grateful state, I want to again thank Stan Erck and the Novavax team. We are so proud to have you in our state, and we're very proud of the life-saving work that your incredible team is doing here. So thank you for your swift and immediate response to this crisis, for your continued leadership in the biohealth industry, and for inviting us here to be a part of this exciting announcement today. Now, I'd like to turn it over to a medical doctor and molecular immunologist who, in the middle of the global pandemic, took over as the president and CEO of the Biotechnology Innovation Organizations, BIO. Please welcome Dr. Michelle McMurray Heath.
Well, thank you, Governor, for that warm introduction, and it is such a pleasure to be joining Stan Erck's team here at Novavax. You know, we at the Biotechnology Innovation Organization represent biotechnology companies large and small. We have over 1,000 members, and they range from the healthcare space to agriculture to energy and the environment. But it's so refreshing to see how that entire span of companies and industries has mobilized to help this country and this world recover from COVID. So we have tracked all of the company responses to COVID since the beginning of the pandemic, and there are over 760 products in development today in the first 8 months of the pandemic, an unprecedented response. Over 180 of these are all targeted at trying to develop a vaccine to COVID, 9 of which are nearing or in phase 3 clinical trials. Novavax is a shining example of that pivoted response, that galvanized intellectual capacity, and the ability to put the power of science to healing the world. We're so proud of the work that they've accomplished to date and the promise that they have for tomorrow. I think it's important for us to realize that our biotechnology companies are the bridge to the progress of the future. Of those 180 I mentioned, over 70% of the vaccine development programs are happening in small biotech companies, companies like Novavax that are part and parcel of their communities, and they're helping their communities not just recover from the disease, but recover economically as well. Over 50% of the response to COVID is being tackled by US-based companies. So think about that. The US is taking the charge at over half of the research, more than all the other countries combined, to try to get us back on the right foot after COVID. So we at the Biotechnology Innovation Organization couldn't be prouder of how our companies, our scientists, our entrepreneurs have really mobilized to change the world. And I hope that we're able to really look to this and see the power that it has. If we look just in the state of Maryland, our companies employ over 40,000 Marylanders. It's incredible. We are part of the economic fiber of this state and part of the intellectual capacity that this state has to really lead the country in getting us back on our right foot. So I'm so proud of the scientists here today, so proud of the entrepreneurs like Stan Eck, who really put their money where their mouth is and really took a risk and a gamble to put companies to work to help humankind, humanity, and human health. So a hats off to the efforts here today, and we look forward to seeing what's coming out of the impending clinical trials because the early results look very promising. Thank you.
Hey, Sylvia? Sylvia? Are we supposed to do Q&A now? Is that after? Well, maybe it's after this one announcement. For all of those who sent the advanced reservation in for your vaccine, I think it's lined up over there. I don't think they'll let me do that. Sorry. We do have Q&A. That's the first time I've been asked that.
That was my first question.
So the timetable, you know, I can't speak for the industry. You can read what everybody puts out. There's various companies that started phase 3 clinical trials earlier than others. We are about to start our phase 3 clinical trials. We're about to start, as I mentioned, 3 of them, in addition to a phase 2B efficacy trial to study efficacy down in South Africa. It's impossible to predict because it's all evidence-based cases. You have to have somebody in the placebo group get a case and somebody in the vaccine group not get a case to show that it works. And so you have a certain number of those statistically that you have to get. And it's a matter of how quickly you can recruit. And we're recruiting as fast as we can. We'll be recruiting throughout this year. We don't have a prediction of when we will unblind and see efficacy. We're hoping that it's sometime, certainly by the beginning of next year and early next year. The good news is, the other question I'm sure is burning on your mind is, well, okay, you get efficacy, then you get the FDA to approve it. When can we get vaccine? That we're working on. We're not waiting on at all. We've started large-scale manufacturing. We are in 7 countries, 7 different manufacturing sites, all making the drug substance that then ultimately gets formulated into a vaccine and will be put on the shelf in inventory awaiting approval, so that once we do have approval, then it will be distributed quickly and as quickly as humanly possible. And as the governor stated, there'll be levels of vaccine access depending upon your risk, but we plan on making enough vaccine that it can get distributed globally quickly.
FDA approval has been discussed this week. Any thoughts on this enhanced?
No, I think that's okay. We are completely fine with that because that's the way we do our trials. They did not throw anything new at us. We do the full safety calculations and monitoring throughout the trials, and so that I don't think had any impact on us.
Speaking of early access, since you're based in Maryland, does Maryland get like the friends and family first crack on that? Like,
I told you, if you had sent your request in, you could line up and get the vaccine right over there this morning.
I'm just trying to put all the medical language that was used today in a way that regular people like me can understand. So
Yeah.
the procurement and the fact that you're based here, being Maryland, will be one of the first jurisdictions.
I think that, that's not our decision. It is going to be, there's going to be guidelines and structures organized by places like the CDC and the ACIP, who are part of the CDC, who will, and HHS, who will prioritize who gets it in what states. And so it's not I'm happy it's not a decision I have to make. We've got to keep our heads down and get a vaccine approved, and that's others to decide, at least in the pandemic period.
And I just want to make sure I thought I heard you say that you, Novavax, began working on this in January 11th or 12th? That's when you started this?
That's right.
Vaccine?
Unless you want to say we started working on this 10 years ago when we started making our first coronavirus vaccine. So we've been working on the platform for a decade. And this coronavirus vaccine is very similar to the SARS coronavirus that we made 10 years ago, and similar to the MERS coronavirus vaccine. So we've been working on vaccines for emerging infectious diseases using the same platform. We make a protein, we mix it with an adjuvant, and you inject it. Same platform for flu, for Ebola, for 3 coronavirus vaccines. This particular strain of coronavirus we started making on January 11th.
So what was it about what you had heard coming out of the news globally or from China? I mean, many of us have been hearing about it in early January, but a lot of Americans hadn't. What was it that made your team say, okay, let's get
We pay attention. And in the discovery group, which is the first lab we went into, we pay attention to what viruses are circulating. In fact, in part because we're in the flu business, and there's new flu strains circulating every year, so we have to go make them, because we don't know which one is going to be selected for next year's vaccine, so we make them all, and we put them on the shelf. And we did the same thing and on January 11th, we didn't know it was going to be a pandemic, but it had enough buzz that we thought it was important. So we made it, and it wasn't very long thereafter when the real concern, it was sometime I think in late January or February, that it kept circulating, and it became clear that it was going to go somewhere. And I think in March is when it was crystal clear that it was going to go this direction. Yes.
Yeah, a two-part question. Can you list the 7 manufacturing facilities, which countries?
I can.
And what they do and the different ones?
So
And then related, you're one of the only front runners that isn't partnered with a major pharmaceutical company or isn't a major pharmaceutical company. How can we realistically scale up, given you have
Yeah.
employees?
Yeah.
Can you meet that?
It's a miracle, isn't it? Well, it is, and it is in part, but we're agile and facile, I guess. We started negotiating for a plant, a very large capacity plant. Turns out it can make up to 1 billion doses of our coronavirus vaccine in the Czech Republic. But we started looking at it as a flu plant in January. And then in February, we started thinking, well, maybe it's not going to be a flu plant. And in March, we decided it's not going to be a flu plant, so it's going to be a coronavirus. So that's the first one. The next one is in Spain. These are all to make the protein. There's a spike protein you've heard about. All these are making the spike protein. So you've got Spain, you've got Czech Republic, you've got 2 sites in the U.S., one in Research Triangle Park, one in College Station, Texas. Same process. We do it in South Korea. We have an agreement with Takeda of Japan to make it there. We've got an agreement in the UK for another manufacturing facility. And I think I've covered, and then the big one we most recently did last week, we announced, was with the largest, we do have a pharmaceutical partner you've never heard of. It's called Serum Institute. They're headquartered in India. They make 1.6 billion doses of vaccine every year. They're the largest vaccine manufacturer in the world. They just happen to sell in the 180 countries that are low-income countries, and they take care of all the low-income world. So we have a partner. So we don't have a vaccine just for the high-income countries in the U.S. and Europe. We have a vaccine that's now, with our partnership, is going to be distributed, because we can't distribute vaccine in 180 low-income countries. We don't know how. It's a regulatory process, it's distribution, logistics, but they can. And so that's how we do it, through partnerships. And on our own. So we've gone, as I mentioned, we started at 150 people globally in January. We've got 510 or 20 today. We'll be 1,000 people by the end of March. And then with our partners, that's how we'll do it. Sir.
I actually had a question for Governor Hogan. Governor, you probably know that there's about 24 investigations into possible COVID outbreaks at private schools here in Montgomery County. What do you say to those that have been...
Maybe we ought to let finish the on-topic questions of any of us on this, and then we'll get to whatever other questions, I think.
Hi, I wanted to know, 4 companies have released their phase 3 protocol. Does Novavax plan to do that also?
Yes, we do. I think the industry is in a pandemic, has decided that transparency on this particular issue, which is normally transparent, but it's usually given out after a trial is done and you're showing the results. But we will share protocols.
Some companies have struggled in their phase 3s to get a sufficiently diverse population.
Right.
Two-part question again. How are you approaching that? Are you reaching 30, 40%? And also, people with obesity don't respond as well to vaccines often. Do you have a body mass index cutoff that's disqualifying for participation in the phase 3 trials?
Dr. Glenn, are you paying attention to this question? Or are you texting? Yeah, okay. So, at any rate, the question was whether we have we're trying to get diverse populations, and one of those populations is obese people who maybe have a harder time getting an immune response. Do we have those body mass index in our?
Yeah, we do. So, very, very few exclusion criteria, trying to get a broader population. And as you mentioned, big emphasis on the at-risk populations, Latinx and African American. So these protocols allow us to be very liberal. So we will do that. When you analyze the data, you do the whole population. And then, at the end of it, you can do these sub-analyses to see how that might work. So that's a really insightful question about how the immune system works. Old people, too, like Stan and I, in that trial, were, also highlighted in the recruitment of the trial.
Your South Africa site team.
Sorry?
Your South Africa site team.
Yes. So we have 3 efficacy studies we're doing that kind of represent slightly different tweaks on the same theme. We want to, as Stan mentioned, provide convincing evidence that the vaccine is safe and efficacious. I think complying with, for example, the FDA guidance on that. So we have a South African, and they have the same endpoints, we call it, the same very similar. We're trying to prevent COVID disease by, as determined by PCR. So we have a big trial in South Africa. We went there because we knew the investigators are very, very good. And it was a high transmission setting, so there's really a good chance to, and we also include in that an HIV positive population, because one of the vaccine experts we have there is specific expertise in HIV patients receiving flu vaccines, etc. We have a trial just about to start in the UK, very big trial. They have a extremely good trial network. You probably see there's a big surge coming back, so I think our timing for going into that setting, and then as Stan mentioned, this very large trial through the Operation Warp Speed, which I think answers your question about the population. Very broad look at who 18 and above. So we are considering adolescents as one of our other programs to see, because they are seeing disease in that population. And right now, all the companies are foregoing a younger pediatric population until we gather more evidence that is needed. So.
Last question for Governor Hogan, please.
Governor?
I think we had one before. Right here, right? What was your question?
What do you say to those who have been critical to your decision to overturn Dr. Dale's order in Montgomery County closing private schools in light of some of the outbreak investigations that are going on?
Sure, it wasn't my decision, but we just weighed in and they decided themselves that they were going to do that. But look, we have had our record lows every single day. We've been going down for months. We're now at 2.6% positivity. We've dropped to our lowest lows among young people. All 24 of our public school jurisdictions have now made the decision and submitted plans, which were approved yesterday by the Maryland State Department of Education, to at least begin bringing some students back safely into schools. We couldn't be better on our health metrics. We're one of the best in the country. We've continued to drop on hospitalizations, on deaths, on our cases per 100,000, on our positivity rate, and young people had the biggest drop. And we haven't had a real problem with schools so far, but we have very detailed plans from the Maryland Department of Health and the Maryland State Department of Education about what to do if a student becomes infected or if you have an outbreak in a classroom or in a school. And the smart people at the local level are also very capable, and they've got plans about what to do as well. Thank you guys very much.